this happened is because he touched the teapot. And now we know that it is actually cursed. So he has a succubus inside him now, or something like that. So the title, I'll let her say something about it if she needs to. But the title of this talk was not what it is on the program. The censors censored me, so they renamed it. So it's going to be about. Well, you've read the title, and everybody here knows Mandisa, right? If you don't, I don't know why you're here. Come on. All right, so Mandisa, are you going to give us information about how terrible all the skeptics are to you?
No.
All right, I'll let her do her talk.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Derek. Good evening, everyone. Yes, come on. It's the evening. It's the first night of Dragon Con. Are y'all glad to be here? For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Mandisa Thomas, and I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated, which is headquartered in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Thank you. I'm proud to have been a part of the Skeptrack at Dragon Con since 2014. And it just feels like everyone here is family. And I really do appreciate being here. This is actually my first in-person speaking engagement for the year, and I'm glad it is here at Dragon Con for my birthday weekend. Yeah, I turned 47 on Monday, and I'm not ashamed of my age because apparently I seem to be aging backwards. People don't, I don't look my age, and so I'm like, okay, great. But the topic at hand that I will be discussing this evening, there is some humor to it. There's definitely sadness to it, but it is worthy of discussion because it will go into why this is my first speaking engagement of the year. And it was important that I talk about it and that there are some things that are cleared up. There are some things that will need to be said, and I'm here to say them. So the title of the talk is called "The Shame of It All: Respectability and Stigma Among Skeptics." And this is important because in every community we have our issues. There are things that as human beings we need to resolve. However, as a community that prides ourselves on skepticism, evidence, verification, critical thought, there are still some blind spots that are important to address and that we should resolve. So I'm going to start up. Can y'all see the presentation? Okay, awesome. No, well, y'all can see me. Oh, okay. So there's a presentation that I have that should be pulling up because I always like to give visuals with my presentations because I think that is very, very important. But if we can get that up, that would be great. Is there anything I need to do? Okay, but I can't really pull anything up from here. It's on my computer. Uh-oh. Okay, we'll get this straightened out real quick. Good thing there's yeah, I know, right? I mean, this is a subject that we could probably spend at least a couple of hours on. But, time is limited. And I know there will probably be questions. So we definitely want to get to it. Here we go. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the title is called "The Shame of It All: Respectability and Stigma Among Skeptics." And I am representing my organization, Black Nonbelievers. And so a bit about me, for those of you who aren't aware, like I said, I'm the founder and president. We have been going strong now for 12 years as an organization. I'm originally a native of New York City, but I moved down here when I was 21, so I guess I'm from Georgia now. I should go back and say that the title, another subtitle of this talk should be Mandy Gate Part 3, because I always seem to be in some sort of trouble in this community for something. But this kind of goes into the fact that, yes, I am an unapologetic Black atheist woman from New York. That comes with things. That comes with the perspective, that comes with a mind, and it comes with a mouth that may be a bit intimidating for some people. But guess what? We're here. And I didn't really have a religious upbringing. My upbringing was pretty secular. I was raised in the Black conscious community. So I learned a lot about Black history and culture, institutional racism, and injustice of many marginalized groups growing up. So I was raised with an awareness and a perspective that has informed my activism today. In 2018, I transitioned to full-time activism due to my family life and my work in this movement, where it was determined that this was the best use of my time. I currently serve on the advisory board for Humanist Global Charity, and up until recently, American Atheists and the American Humanist Association. I've also previously served on the boards for the Secular Coalition for America and Foundation Beyond Belief, which is now Go Humanity. I'm the recipient of several awards, the Secular Student Alliance's Backbone Award in 2019, as well as the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Free Thought Heroine Award of that same year. I was named the UU Humanists Association's Person of the Year in 2018. I was a co-recipient of the Harvard Humanist of the Year Award in 2020. And in 2022, the Irving and Annabelle Wolfson Award, which is awarded by the UU Congregation of Worcester, Massachusetts. And at this time, I'm still a certified humanist celebrant. I will say why I am still a certified humanist celebrant later on in this talk. Next up, before I begin, I have to give some special thank yous to the six women that are pictured with me in this slide. Sharon Paget, Cynthia McDonald, Kelly King, Tina Marshall, Candace Gorham, and Deanna Williams. The link that you see on this slide is a response to some things that were alleged at the end of last year and the beginning of this year. The five of those women put their names on it. One could not due to certain positions in the movement, which is understood, at least understood by me. But these five women felt it important to stand by and stand up for what they thought was right when something was going terribly wrong. And if you have not had the opportunity to read that statement, I highly recommend it. It is a long read. There's a lot of sensitive information in it, and it exposes some things that you probably didn't want to know about me, but shit happens. So I really, once again, want to thank them for their fortitude and their determination in over these past few months in standing up for me and this organization, because they did not want to see it burn like some others did. So with that, just a short advisory. This talk contains information that may be sensitive to some of you. It also includes explicit language, sexual references, and some graphic details. The censors can't do anything about it now, even though I will keep it as professional as possible. The purpose of this talk, before I begin, is to provide relevant subject matter to this track, as we are talking about skepticism, we're talking about atheism, humanism, critical thought. That is very relevant. Also, to clear up any misinformation and misunderstandings as much as possible. to hopefully evaluate biases and triggers that are related to the subject matter, and also promote objective and positive discussion and problem resolution. What this talk will not do, it will not deliberately attack any party or parties. That will be unintentional if it happens. Some shade may be thrown, just to let you know right now. There will be some shade thrown, but it is nothing compared to what was thrown at me. It will not try to win anyone over, because I am a firm proponent that the work and the actions often speak for themselves and need very little defense at times. So, and I'm sorry, I'm not in the business of kissing anyone's ass. Never have been. It also will not shy away from uncomfortable discussions, because that is a part of how we grow as human beings and as a community. Sometimes we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It happens. And hopefully it will not be the last of its kind, because I've been in this movement long enough to where I have been a witness um, to drama. I've been a witness to tension. I've been a witness to splits. I've been a witness to all of these things. And this is not the first time, like I said before, that I've been in trouble, so to speak. This is not the first time I have experienced attacks by people from within this community, from different backgrounds. And so these are things that we have to discuss and that I feel is important to be transparent about, especially if we will continue to grow. And if this is new to you and if the work that we do is important, that it will hopefully compel or encourage you to support it. And that's all I can ask for. So regarding the recent controversy, I usually have I have a statement that I prepared. I've said it a few times on a couple of virtual talks. I've said it on our show in the cut. On December 5th of 2022, five five affiliate leaders of Black nonbelievers abruptly separated from the organization. They did so after just 2 days before. A few of them were very joyous and laughing after our cruise convention, BNCCon 2022. They went on record as saying they had a good time. You know, it was like a family event. We were hugging, we were laughing. I mean, it seemed to be joyous. I should have known from before the cruise ended that there were some, that something was about to happen. But um, part of the reason they gave for their separation was because of some things that happened on the cruise. Now, I have openly stated that there was a personal confrontation with another speaker, with two speakers. And after some concerns were brought to my attention, I took them under consideration. I apologized, and I also took corrective action. However, on December 5th, around 8:48 p.m., when I landed from my flight, when I landed back in Georgia from Miami, I received a number of emails saying that I had been removed from certain the meetup groups that they all ran. I had been removed from their Facebook pages that they had run. I got an email saying that they had separated and that they were going to put out a public statement citing unethical behavior, code of conduct violations, all these different things. And at that point, I couldn't say I was surprised by one particular individual. The others came as a bit of a shock because there were things that as a collective we did not get to address. And so I eventually came to accept their decision and that we were going to move forward. From the beginning, though, I had begun to learn some information that let me know that what they were doing was not, their hearts were not in the right place. But because there is an aspect to this that I know, first of all, I had to think about the fact that these were people that I were close to, that we had worked together. Um, we had worked together, I thought, well, even though there were some things that came up. These are people who I didn't have any animosity towards. And so this was like a shock. And so with that, um, I had to choose my actions carefully, because the one thing I did not want to do was incite a flame war or to go back and forth with people who were within the organization. This was internal. So I really had to choose my actions and my words carefully. And also with the folks who were directly involved and who were still left. So um, they would subsequently come out with these reports. There was an article written on Religion News Service that at the time there was still very, very little information provided on their part. And so there were people who were left with questions about, well, what did Mandisa do? You said she was unethical. What exactly is it that she did? And but at the time they claimed they did a thorough investigation. So people were like, well, where are the results of this thorough investigation if you've already done it? So just trying to at least get ahead of it, trying to make sure that, we stayed on the up and up as an organization and acknowledged that these things were happening. Um, we just continued to move forward. But in these are two memes that I that I acquired on social media, and it really really spells out um, part of this whole thing here. And the first one says you can be friends with people for years, and it could take years to realize they were never your friend. And also this cute one about how people describe your cancel friend and what your cancel friend is actually like. The one thing I can say that I am very, very grateful for are the very huge and high number of people in this community who I've had direct engagement with, that I have never been pretentious with, that I've always responded to because I've always appreciated our working relationships and our friendships. And so that's something I've never taken for granted. So that was another reason I chose not to respond, because the red flags in some of those individuals were actually glaring. But as I will say later on in the talk, there were some things that I have to accept responsibility for why this happened. So going into the heart really of all of this, I have to give a definition of slut shaming. We've heard that term before. It's been around for a while. And by definition, it is the act or fact of stigmatizing a woman for engaging in behavior judged to be promiscuous or sexually provocative. Our community frowns on slut shaming because guess what? We advocate for bodily autonomy for men, women, or however one chooses or feels compelled to identify. Because we are supposed to be breaking sexual shame and stigma in these communities based on evidence and good information. And what happens between grown adults should be nobody else's fucking business as long as it is consensual. However, the narrative that was put out there about me was that as a leader in this community, that I was abusing my power, that I was compelling people to do what I wanted them to do under the threats of them being thrown out of the organization, and that I was misappropriating. I mean, there were a lot of things that were being said. Mind you, with very little to no evidence to this fact. None whatsoever. And this was evidenced even in what these individuals put out there about me. The information was very contradictory, it was very conflicting, but the language was very inflammatory. And so, therefore, that had an impact. And ultimately, this is what it boiled down to. But we also have to talk about respectability politics, which we know happens a lot, especially in Black communities. And it is defined as not even a political strategy, but just a strategy overall, wherein members of a marginalized community will consciously abandon controversial aspects of their cultural slash dash political identity as a method of assimilating, achieving social mobility, and gaining the respect of the majority culture. A prime example of this, and it's one that I absolutely despise, is when certain elites in Black communities harshly critique rap music and what is considered whole culture. It unfairly shames women. It unfairly shames sexual liberation. Certainly, there are conversations to be had about consent and as well as the quote unquote role that women are supposed to play. But to blame the issues in our communities on the music alone is very ill informed and it's very unfair. And it just reeks of Christian nationalism. Let's just say it. It reeks of this religious conditioning that teaches us that women have to have a certain place or certain people have to have a certain place. And yes, that is considered anti-Blackness. It is considered misogynoir. And so, there is a pushback against respectability politics. It is often based on dogmas. It is based on confirmation biases, and it's really really rooted in just folks' personal gripes that they try to push as public crusades. And as a practitioner in this community for years, I've seen quite a bit of it. Um, so we have to, I like to try to give definitions for these things. But my mistakes in this whole thing were allowing anger and frustration to get the better of me. For those of you who aren't familiar with my story, especially last year, I had a rough year last year. Both my biological father passed away, and one of my BN fathers passed away. And so there was a lot of death and grief that took place last year that I realized that I probably didn't handle well at all. I did exercise poor judgment and discretion because I allowed myself to become involved with people who really were not on the level, and allowing certain things to go on based on what is happening in my life and in my personal life. So I have to accept responsibility for that. I also let too many bad things slide for the sake of unity. We're still a small demographic, and we try to, get as many people, a chance, the benefit of the doubt as possible. But the one thing I've had to understand was that, and I've said this before, everyone ain't gonna make it. And there is a certain standard that I do like to uphold within my organization, especially when it comes to communication and respect. And when I find that people are not doing that, then yes, we have to make some changes. But also taking on too many tasks and not establishing better boundaries. A few years ago, I decided to take better charge of my physical and mental health. Really started to try to examine. I kind of knew why I was doing the things I was doing, but I was really making a concentrated effort to make some changes. Um, and so, but between last year and just between some of the individuals, it just became overwhelming for me. And in this, I just realized that, there were things that I realized I contributed to the problem and why these things happen. So I'm not sitting up here saying that, I am without fault. um, I know it takes a lot for people to be reflective, and I had to do that. And I also had to realize that there were people in this community that I realized I let down, and I had to come to terms with that. That being said, their mistakes, there were plenty of mistakes they made. They also allowed their anger and frustration to get the better of them. And they gave into groupthink and intimidation. One of the people at the heart of this separation, whom I used to call a sister, is a former Jehovah's Witness and a former prophetess, evangelical prophetess. Jehovah's Witnesses are brutal when it comes to ostracizing people, when it comes to branding people as apostates, when it comes to turning people against when they decide to separate. They're brutal. And some of those evangelical um, denominations are brutal with that as well. They are full of fire and brimstone. They operate on fear. And I recognize that this is what was happening with this individual, which reminded me of my childhood and how I grew up, which was triggering to me. And I'm like, because that is not how I like to operate. As a person, I certainly don't like to try to operate like that as, in running this organization. So that was definitely a thing. And part of me knew that this was how this individual was going to act, but the fact that they perpetuated this idea, that this notion that I was a predator, um, actually going along with just an outright lie is what really did it for me. But in that, they were projecting their own actions and using false equivalences to justify their actions, despite being advised not to do that. Because some of the writers of the report that I referenced earlier were some of the folks who tried to tell them, y'all know this is a lie. Y'all know this is not how Mandisa is. If there are issues that you have, let's sit down, bring them to her, and let's see how we can fix this. They chose not to do that. It chose to go in a very, very destructive manner. And they deliberately provoked anger and emotional triggers onto others in an attempt at destruction while claiming that they were doing it in good faith. This is exactly what they did. And when people actually questioned them, they were attacked. And another mistake that they made was just basically putting me and my body on display. Because once again, most of us frown on slut shaming in this community. So there had to be a narrative put out that it was predatory, that I was a monster in order to justify it. Because again, who someone sleeps with, as long as it is consensual and as long as everybody is grown, is nobody's fucking business. Now, if we are friends and we talk amongst each other, if you felt like, there were too many things that might have been shared, okay, I get that. But let's not act like we didn't reciprocate, as friends and as colleagues. So just trying to put me out there as just this deliberate monster um, was a mistake that they made, because there's so many people who know better. And I'm not just saying that based on the fact that I am more in the public eye than anyone else. It is because of how I engage people. And that is a part of me that as much as I wish I could be more open about, I know everybody can't handle that. So I've always tried to exercise some discretion on that. They also deliberately went to a bunch of organizations, putting out this information directly to them and making it it's either us or them thing. And so that contributed to so much of the tension, so many things. However, um, things have still been moving along. This particular situation has had me reevaluating my priorities, um, where I need to be refocusing. I mean, the focus has always been on the work, but how I do the work is important, and how we do the work is important. Also, seeking and taking advice. I've always asked folks in the community for their advice, and I've always encouraged it as much as possible. I had to do this on Google Slides, so sorry for the miscoloration there. um, and I've been continuing being work. Um, I still directly organize events for our members, and I work with our new team leaders, which also sort of fueled the flame for these folks because, again, the intention was to see me ousted. The intention was to see me disgraced and or divorced. That's what they wanted. Everyone was supposed to turn their back on me based on citing ethics, citing harassment, citing coercion, even though what they put out there did not match. Those words were just simply supposed to turn everybody, and it did turn some people. It did turn folks. Um, but again, I just thought it, and I was advised to, like Mandisa, just shut the fuck up. Don't say much. Say what you have to say. Make those statements, and just keep it moving. And that was hard as hell. I got to tell you. Like I said, as a black, unapologetic woman from New York City, that was hard as hell to do because I don't like being lied on. I don't like my name being dragged through the mud. And I really had to evaluate. It's a good thing I have a good therapist. I had to come to the realization that I was still worthy of going to therapy because that is where it took me. So that leads me to enhancing my health routine. I started taking antidepressants. I realized I probably should have been taking them a long time ago because I am pretty much high functioning as an activist, as a mother, as a wife, as everything. And I realized that I had to come to the real, I had to realize that I needed additional help. So I started taking medication in addition to going to the gym, in addition to continuing seeing my therapist. Been recruiting new team members who are enthusiastic, who are willing to do the work, who didn't necessarily know too much about what was going on, had an inkling, but still knew with the work. And that I wasn't going in there saying, well, these people did this, that, and the third. Are you, do you know what this organization is about? Here's what we need to do to get you on board. Let's do it. Also, we're researching new funding opportunities. We are going to be seriously considering um, um, going after more grants in the future. And also because there was funding that was pulled, there was funding that was stopped. I've had to, do some work part time. So I've been working for Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash in addition to still doing being work. We still host our YouTube show. Again, we still do events. We are revising our bylaws. We are working on strategic planning. We're doing all these things. But guess what? Bills still got to get paid because guess what? Being has never been an actual paid position for me. It is still technically volunteer. And we've always run on donations. We've always run on folks and the generosity of others. But guess what? Our financial information is out there on our website, and when you look at it, you see how people grossly, um, they grossly assumed how much we pull in. What we pulled in should be my salary. And I say that unapologetically. But coming from a hospitality background, coming from a do what it takes practice, I'm doing what I got to do in the meantime. And I do it unapologetically because I see so many people, other people on the roads doing it. And that is how you directly engage and gauge your humanism, how you treat people who are just simply on the ground. And I'll never forget one of my good pastor friends who just got married this year, Lorenzo Neal, shout out to him. When I told him I was doing DoorDash, he said, "How do you think I pay for my wedding?" And I'm just like, okay, well, this is I mean, it offers an opportunity for flex work. For folks who need extra income. It's been decent, and customer service is in my blood. And so it isn't anything I'm ashamed of, because if you've ever been to a BN event, if you've ever seen us anywhere, guess who's always there doing the heavy lifting, setting up the tables, lifting the bags, all of that stuff. Guess who's doing that? Me. So I've never been afraid to do that hard work and do what I have to do in a community of people who pride themselves on their intellectual capabilities and how much smarter they are than others, which can be considered elitist and classist. I personally frown upon that because, again, I know where I come from. So in the meantime, I ain't never been scared to work. So, I'm still working. I'm still working on being stuff, and I'm still working. So this is what we've been doing. But I need to get into how shaming and respectability can hurt our community. First and foremost, it mimics religious behavior. We see all this drama that comes from the religious community. It's nothing new, and it's nothing new within mankind, or humankind rather, but it certainly does not paint us. I'll never forget. I haven't directly read any of the attacks against me. There was one particular hit piece that in which I was told that it was said that we are not the church, but you're doing what church folks do. And another thing is that it undermines our credibility. If you are just simply taking something at a person's word and making final decisions without even fact checking, without looking at all of the information, that does undermine your credibility. And that happened with someone who I worked very closely with in this community. I am so disappointed in how she just simply turned on me based on, I mean, the conversation we had did not go well. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to continue to try to convince you if your mind is already made up. If you feel like you're doing what you have to do, then fine. But it can also render us as one-dimensional. Um, as a community, we should be trying to gather from different sources and also looking at things from different angles. So it's important that to mind when we might be going down this route of being triggered by certain things, and not and removing and looking at it objectively, even when we don't want to. Because sometimes we don't want to see certain things. And sometimes coming across new information can be, again, very uncomfortable and very disappointing. And I know for some people, they're disappointed in me. And I had to accept that. But we can never just simply use that as an excuse to just start pointing fingers and just start attacking each other. It can also prevent objective discussions. Now, granted, there are some things that I don't think should be up for certain aspects of discussion, especially when it comes to marginalized communities and what we go through. Um, there are some things that, yeah, you can have an opinion on it, but guess what? It doesn't mean that you that your opinion is valid over mine, especially if I'm the one going through it. But Um, these types of actions and behaviors can definitely prevent objective discussion. It can also discourage new leadership. There are a lot of potential leaders, whether they're volunteer or paid, and if they are coming to a community where they see the actions might be just like what they go through in church, that is a problem. Also, it dehumanizes people. It's like, come on now. Um, I remember someone when I was talking about what was happening to me. This person who is technically still a believer was like, I don't understand. Did you kill anybody? They were like, did you steal hundreds of thousands of dollars? I mean, did you? I mean, so the question is, it's like, okay, there is a part of humanity that we all have. Um, there are very few exceptions, especially when, yeah, you do violate consent, especially those who can't consent. There are some exceptions. But again, when we're talking about grown folks, when we're talking about miscommunication, when we're talking about a subject like sex and sexuality and sexual liberation that lends itself to so much stigma, you do not have the right to dehumanize someone simply based on what you wouldn't do. You don't have the right to do that. And you don't have the right to shame anyone for that. And it also promotes punishment over improvement. We're always talking about um, criminal justice reform, especially as it pertains to like drug laws and the laws that have imprisoned many people of color, um, and also the stigmas that have really impacted women, in particular, when it comes to sexual stigma. When it comes to when you use this false narrative of, well, if it was a man, you would have done this, and making these false comparisons and just painting people as monsters. When especially when the information doesn't match up, the math doesn't math. The math ain't mathing, as we say. And just trying to get people to just get on your side because you have this axe to grind against this person, and you want everybody. You want to starve this person. You want to starve this organization instead of building up what you say you can do better. Because if you're trying to build something better, then you don't have time to take anyone else down. You're supposed to be trying to build folks up. What the fuck are you doing trying to tear somebody else down if you're legit? And that's just all there is to it. So it promotes punishment over improvement. And human beings, we make mistakes. There has to be room to correct that mistake. And let me just say, sexual liberation is not shameful. I mean, I've done a number of talks about sex and sexuality. Black non-believers in our programming, we always include something. We include an after dark component, and we've done this on the cruise, where we talk about aspects of sex and sexuality. I mean, we've had folks talk about BDSM and kink. We've had folks talk about sexual relationships during COVID. We build that because we try to deconstruct stigma, especially around sex and sexuality and sexual liberation. I use that picture on purpose. That was from 2012 when I was asked to participate in a calendar, which was supposed to feature nude to semi-nude folks in the community. I wanted to do fully nude. I love nudity. I love body positivity. And so, but I had to compromise with the spouse. So, the spouse knows my stance on monogamy. The spouse still espouses patriarchal ideals, which is a problem for me. But again, the spouse also has a terminal illness, which we've had to deal with for years as a family. It has taken its mental toll, but I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick. But I have in my practice taken my own experiences and education, and I communicate accordingly, not as simply someone who is degreed in these areas, but as someone who is considered a leader in this movement, and that I go through shit just like everybody else. um, I also am still healing from trauma and stigma. I have been sexually assaulted as a teenager. And I talk about that because that is still a very sore subject. And there are still many adults who have not dealt with their own trauma. They have not dealt with their own the violence that was committed against them. And it's important that as we are working with people who are, who are dealing with these things, it's important for us to be honest about that. And also, I had to come to terms with my own sexuality and desires and embrace them. So, and also what it means to be beautiful on the outside and inside. I've had to wrestle with that. And so that is something that I am not ashamed of. And that's why I love that picture. It helped me see myself, that photo shoot helped me see myself in a more positive way. And, I've embraced that. Should complaints about bad behaviors be taken seriously? Absolutely, yes. We have seen our share of folks who have abused their power in this community, and it had been ignored for so long due to their status. They have been allowed to get away with that. We've also seen that in the religious communities, where folks have been allowed to get away with certain things due to their status. So, yes, when these things come up, they should absolutely be taken seriously. Again, when people came to me and asked me what happened, I said, let's schedule a time to talk. Let's talk about it. And I have to warn people that, hey, it may be a little sensitive, but I have no problems talking about it. And yes, they always, and especially as we look at statistics about sexual violence committed against women and also against men too. These are things that we absolutely have to discuss, and also what it means, and especially about the ever changing environment and climate of what it means to have consent and to be respectful of other people. These are things that we should absolutely be talking about and taking seriously. Hell, I've had to take them seriously even within my own organization. And the one person that these folks decided to use um, as an example of me being this monster, this person was the monster. So, we really absolutely should be taking these things seriously. But even more important takeaways, definitely not even more, but leaders are still human beings. Um, we are subject again to flaws, making mistakes, and not always again exercising the best judgment. But also trust, believe victims, believe when people listen to what people are saying, but you must also verify information. This is the uncomfortable part of this community at times, because as unpleasant as it may be, sometimes we have to dig deeper and we have to dig beyond our own, our own, again, biases or things that will may emotionally trigger us. We have to look beyond that. Also, exercise care and compassion always, especially for those of us who are in leadership and who take on responsibility. Oftentimes, we are thrown to the wolves because, we are the ones who people come to with, with what is concerning them, and we're happy to be there for them. But again, there's only, where's the room for us when, when something happens, if we stumble? So care and compassion is not only good for, it is important for, your lay persons or your persons who are just attending. It's also important for leadership. Also, examine privilege and potential biases. We have to be honest about that. We have to be honest about where this may be coming from. And oftentimes, for those of us who are people persons, oftentimes we can just gauge and tell that something is coming from a personal nature. And you don't want to gaslight anybody, but it's again important for us to be honest and to be looking at that, just to make sure that we're coming from an objective point of view. Also, offer resources and support. And also, separations can be amicable. The one thing, if any of those five individuals, one of whom wasn't even on the cruise, and just separated because of what they were told, if they felt that being a part of Black non-believers was no longer for them, perfectly fine with that. Okay, let's have a plan of succession. Let's see if we can have someone take over your affiliate or your group, and let's work on how to do that. But they didn't want to. So, but again, and having to deal with the fact that, yeah, they commandeered a part of what we built. So, there are just so many things that went along with that. But and also, just in conclusion, respect over respectability. How many folks in the room? Is this your first time at Dragon Con? First time? Okay, great. Are you enjoying it so far? Is anyone surprised if anyone has sex at this convention? Anybody? Would anybody be surprised if there was any type of sex like of with more than one person at this convention? Would anybody be surprised about that? Would anybody be judging that? Sex, when it is done right, is wonderful. And it should always be that. It should always be pleasurable for everyone involved. But part of that comes from talking to and communicating with people and treating folks with respect and leaving that judgment at the door for both for both attendees and leaders alike. Because guess what? Leaders are human beings, and some of us like to fuck too. But it's always about, it should always be about respecting each other as individuals, even in disagreement. We don't have to agree to understand. And one thing that has always been important to me is community. I really have to thank my colleagues and our members who said, Mandisa, you can't quit. They were like, no, we know something is wrong with what is being put out here. And they looked at everything and they were like, okay, this just looks like a damn witch hunt. But they were like, we see the work you do. We know the work you do. You can't quit. Because I will tell you, I was close. I was close to quitting. There were times in these past few months where I didn't think I was going to make it and that I didn't think I deserved to be here. But I appreciate everyone who said they understood and that they were not judging, even if there were things they felt that they disagreed with or that they wouldn't do. Um, and I knew I was going to do this on this stage. I'm such a crier, but I actually cried more at the people who showed their support because, again, at one time I didn't think I was worthy of it. And I know that that was what one particular individual was counting on. They were counting on the fact that I would internalize it. But I had to internalize it to say, you know what? Um, we've done some work in this community. We've done some good work as an organization. It will not burn to the ground easily. And if there are things to be fixed, if there are things that we need to work on, then let's do that. Let's do that together while we continue to respect one another. Because people need this community, people need this organization. This organization just has never simply been about me. And I appreciate those who've seen that. And for those of us who will continue to work on this. Um, we should be able to do so with the level of respect, that basic respect as human beings, which has always been important to me. And it should be important to all of us. And so here are a few recommended resources, because I like to give those. um, how conflict is not abuse, overstating harm, community responsibility, and the duty of repair. Also, Sex and God by Darrell Ray, the founder of Recovering from Religion. How religion distorts sexuality. Happy, Sexy, and Shameless, What Our Mothers Didn't Know About the Birds and the Bees. And Erotic Revolutionaries, Black Women, Sexuality, and Popular Culture. I think most of us can attest to the fact that Black women's bodies are always damn near on the chopping block. We are damned if we do and damned if we don't, most of the time. And guess what? It's already hard enough to get the respect we deserve, to get the support we need. But the moment it comes from within, and when people try to destroy, when people can just turn like that, it's just like, damn. But again, at the end of the day, there were folks who stood up. There were folks who continued their support, and they were like, nah, fuck this. We ain't gonna let this happen. So, and I appreciate them all. I appreciate you all, because y'all made the difference. And so being able to talk about this um, in a way that I probably would have even just in regular conversation, you know, it's a part of being a human being. It's a part of what a good leader does. When we acknowledge our mistakes, we give people permission to do the same, and also just to try to be better as individuals and as a community. And that's what's really, really important as we continue to build this together. It's still a work in progress. It's still young, and we're going to make mistakes along the way. But um, as long as you are doing so in a way that builds people up instead of tears folks down, then we'll continue to move forward. I mean, you don't just tear down 12 years of an organization that has survived a lot, just like that. So there we are. So um, if you aren't already following us on social media, please do. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is now X, and YouTube. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out previous episodes of In the Cut. Check out videos from previous events that we've done. There's some good content on there. Help us get up those viewing hours so that we can start monetizing and getting super chats during lives. And also, we are still a 501c3 organization. We have always been in compliance. We are now in compliance in the state of Georgia. There are plenty of ways to support our work. We've put up our table for the night, but we will be back tomorrow. So if you pass by the second, on across the way there, please do stop by, pick up a T-shirt, hoodie, mug, shot glass, some swag, or just drop in some dollars, because we need those as well. So, and you can also contribute. Amazon Smile has technically gone away, but I think Amazon still has a sort of program. We are on Cash App at Black Nonbelievers. You can give through your workplace program. And so there are plenty of ways to support our work. And once again, I appreciate everyone. Thank you for staying through the technical difficulties. Thank you for listening. My face is probably just bad right now. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mandisa. Thank you so much, Mandisa. You have such important things to say. We really need to hear it. Now, would you please we got about 30 seconds left. Can you talk about the women of color?
Yeah, so we're not doing Women of Color Beyond Belief this year, sadly.
Tell us about the past.
Yes, so the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference was an initiative between Black Nonbelievers, Black Skeptics, and the Women's Leadership Project, where it was a conference that featured all women of color. We will be doing another reiteration of that in the future, because it is an important event, because there are the one thing that has always been important to Black nonbelievers in particular is amplifying those people and women of color who are activists, who are not yet well known in this community. So that has always been very, very important to our work. And there are 3 years worth of presentations from 2019, 2021, and 2022 that are on our YouTube channel. Black Nonbelievers was the primary facilitator for putting that together. And I'm very proud of that work because it is historic, especially in our community where we're still working on our diversity efforts. But the one thing that has always been important to us is amplifying those voices and also bringing more people into leadership. The one thing that I am very proud of is the fact that there are a number of people who have expressed that they would not have had the opportunities that they've had if it wasn't for Black nonbelievers, if it wasn't for us helping to amplify their voice and putting them out. Because my thing, more hands are always better than one. More voices are always better than one. I'm not the only Black atheist representative out here. There's more of us. And that has always been very, very important. And I appreciate everyone who's always supported that conference. And because there's some really, really good content there. We also still doing the cruise this year. So we are doing, it's a smaller version this year. And next year we hope to be back on track with the numbers. And I will tell you that most everyone there had a really good time last
That's
year.
wonderful.
It was really, really good. So yeah, we put on some good stuff.
Thank you so much, Mandisa. We
Thank
really
you,
appreciate your being
Angie.
here. Thank you so much. Please join us in about half an hour. 12 minutes to see Blake's representation of the cryptids of Georgia. Thanks for coming. Bye.